Good evening and welcome to the NDTV Dialogues, a conversation of ideas. And well, there's only one idea the whole of India is discussing nowadays, and that's demonetization. Will it actually clean up India's black cash, and what's going to happen while we're trying? Tonight we have a panel of people with very different perspectives. Joining me is Pinky Anand, Additional Solicitor General, Meera Sanyal, former chairperson of the Royal Bank of Scotland, also with AAP, Pranab Sen, former chairman of the National Statistical Commission, and also I'm joined by one of India's most respected business leaders, Narendra Modi. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming in on the show. Mr. Narendra Modi, let me begin by asking you, I remember in earlier programs, you've talked about how when you started out with the idea of Infosys, you weren't used to waiting in corridors, you weren't one of those people who would stand with briefcases to meet bureaucrats. Now, more than 3 decades later, what do you see when you see, what do you feel when you see such a dramatic move really on cleaning up black money?
Well, you know, my view is that the Prime Minister must have consulted with a lot of experts. The Finance Minister, the Finance Secretary, the RBI Governor, and a few others in whom we had total confidence, and come out with what we could all term as a well-meaning decision. Probably his objective was to stop money flowing into terrorists, black money, and therefore he took this decision with the best of intentions. Therefore, as an apolitical citizen, my view is that we should all support him. We should do whatever is possible within our own circumstances to add value to that. That's my view.
You're not answering what I said about businessmen with briefcases, because really in the last years or the last 20 years perhaps, the issue of crony capitalism, the issue of money being able to influence policy decisions, to be influence government, had become something which the people of India voted against in election after election. Do you think that will be tackled with this decision?
Well, you know, while it is true that anything worthwhile, anything that is important, anything that is a progress requires a lot of sacrifice on the part of all citizens, and unfortunately in this particular case, lots of poor people, there is no doubt about it. The way I have looked at it is that I would add value to the poor people around me, people that work with me, in whatever little way I can. What I did was I asked all of them in what way I could add value, and I have added value to the extent possible. So therefore, I think my view is that while it is true that these events would have the potential to create some dissatisfaction amongst the poorer sections of the society, it is the responsibility of the middle income and the upper income people to help the poorer people in whatever little way we can, so that the country can manage this event without too much of a problem.
Meera Sanyal, if I can bring you in on that, because you have a completely different, I mean, you're really at the opposite end of the spectrum perhaps from that view, because you feel that this really has been a disaster. It's been called financial anarchy by some opposition leaders, financial emergency by Mamata Banerjee. Why are you using such strong words for something which the intent, I think, everyone would welcome?
So, you know, I think everyone respects Mr. Narendra Modi, and let me just start by saying that Indians are a very hard-working people. Nobody actually wants to depend on charity, and indeed, as he correctly says, what we have forced a very large portion of our population to do is now be dependent on charity. They can't get their own money out of the banks. So let me give you an example. I was talking to a senior industrialist, small industry. He has an export-oriented unit in Panipat, exporting brass items. He employs 2,000 people. They're seasonal, skilled craftsmen who come in and work. He has the orders. He has big peak orders from Europe because it's the Christmas season. He has 2,000 workers. He has the cash, which is in his bank, but he can't draw it and he can't pay them. And so what has happened over the last few days is that these people who are not able to get enough money to eat have all gone back to their village. And he said, it's interesting. I have the orders, I have committed contracts. If I'm not able to fulfill them, I'm going to fail. These people have a job, but they can't get any money out of it. Who is benefiting out of this? And when we talk of a downward spiral, a shock to the system, this is what it means. This is a move when you suck out 86% of the liquidity of an economy, of which more than 50% is dependent on cash. Mind you, this is the legitimate cash economy. Then you're really delivering a fatal blow to the system. And I'm asking, what was taken into consideration? Mr. Narendra Modi says the Prime Minister must have consulted experts. My question is, who are these experts? Let's bring them to the table. Let's understand their thought process in terms of how they planned to manage the execution of this massive move. We are not hearing any of that.
Pinky Anand, if I can bring you in here, this point on the secrecy around the operation was needed so that terrorists would not be tipped off, criminals would not be tipped off, the black marketers would not be tipped off. But now when we're nearly 2 weeks into this exercise, when questions are being raised, the BJP's answer is that it's anti-national to ask these questions. Anybody who raises questions is supporting the cause of black money. Is this the way really to take a whole country along? What is the thought process and planning? You've had the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice say that if it continues like this, there could be riots on the street. The Calcutta High Court has asked, why does the government keep changing basic things like how much notes you can exchange? Will this person be under the income tax radar or not? Is this really the way it should be happening?
Sonia, I don't know which part we are really talking about. If you are talking about A, is the move good? I think we have certain broad answers across the country, across board to say it's a very welcome move. The intent of the move is definitely not in any question, and the ultimate objective of it to improve the economy, bring in more money is one part. Yes, on the execution there have been some glitches, and as you rightly said, there were bound to be, because secrecy had to be involved in this whole transaction, otherwise the money would never have ultimately come out in the open, and that's the only intent of the entire exercise. And this has been the exercise and the intent of the governments even earlier. The idea is the black money has to come back into the system, because too much black money, whether it is unaccounted money, whether it is terrorist money, whether it is corrupt money, is behind the walls and unavailable for use in the economy. So the idea is to bring it back. The glitches that have come around, yes, there have been some, but please take it like the other way. A few days back, the matter came up with the Supreme Court also. The Supreme Court also has been very clear and categorical in saying there is no question of interference in the policy matters of the government. This is a policy move made and for the betterment of the economy. The glitches, if any, are being sorted out from time to time. The efforts behind it, the expertise behind it, yes, it will come into the opening at some point or the other, the relevant time being whatever. But let me tell you one thing, Sonia. Across board in the country, urban, rural, middle class, rich man, poor man, by and large there is complete support for the action which has been taken. Yes, people may be having some difficulties, but despite that they say they are entirely along with the move. All we need to do is, from the government side, is to ensure that there is least harassment.
Mr. Sen, if you can comment on that, because what Pinky said is true in a sense. Even when our reporters have gone to rural areas in Bundelkhand and other areas, there has been a large-scale support for the move, even by those who are suffering the most. In fact, who literally have no money at home to eat, who are waiting in lines, but are stoically saying, we support what the Prime Minister's done. Why do you think that is then?
I think there's been a huge amount of pent-up rage and anger at this amassing, and really quite shameless amassing of wealth. So the fact that they are supporting the move is, I think, is quite natural. The real question you need to ask, Sonia, is how long is it going to last? Within the next 1.5 months, the rest of the kharif is going to come in. Today there is not enough liquidity to buy the crop anywhere, and east and south are the worst affected. That's where the kharif is coming in now. The rabi sowing is going to happen all over the country. there is simply not enough credit. So what have you said? I'm going to give you 50,000, 25,000 out of your own savings, 25,000 out of your agricultural credit. Anybody who knows anything about agriculture knows this is not enough for sowing. So I think the real crunch is going to come at the end of December, and we will know that what is the Rabi sowing relative to the normal. And if it is what I suspect it's going to be, which could be something like 30 to 40% below the normal, then we are in deep trouble. Very, very deep trouble.
So is your main issue with it the implementation or even the idea of this drastic surgery needed virtually?
No, I don't think, see, the point is surgery needed. I don't think anybody questions that. But think of it, you're really dealing with two issues. One is counterfeit, and which is really the compelling thing. And the second is black money. As far as counterfeits are concerned, typically counterfeit notes are in only one denomination. And from what we do know, and this has happened time and again, there have been seizures, is all 500 rupee notes. So if you had actually said, I'm demonetizing 500 at the stroke of midnight, and then go on from there, this would be entirely manageable, number one. Number two, timing is critical. Does it have to be done in the middle of the Kharif and beginning of Rabi? Could it not have waited for 2 months? I mean, would heavens have fallen?
No, those are interesting points. And of course, you've had Baba Ramdev saying that, well, many BJP leaders are bachelors, so they didn't know it was wedding season either, which for families across India can also be an issue of life and death, especially at a time when we've seen, and in fact, Mr. Narendra Modi, if I can bring you in, you're of course in the city of Bangalore, which saw one of the most ostentatious weddings of recent times, that is of the Reddy brothers, mining baron who's facing corruption charges, having this ostentatious wedding. And I come back to the question I made, that when we talk about black money and the rage that even the ordinary Indian or the poorest Indian has against it, it is built up by ostentatious displays like this wedding, by the fact of corporate leaders and private jets. We had an earlier Prime Minister also make the point that corporate India needs to think about the message it sends out with its ostentatious lifestyle, even when their balance sheets are often in the red. And especially now at a time when again the list of corporate loan defaulters is still not being made public. The question is that will a surgical strike like this actually impact the big guys?
Well, you know, you are absolutely right, Sonia. I have always said that in a country like India, where capitalism is just taking root, it is the responsibility of every corporate leader, every capitalist to demonstrate that capitalism is not bad, and the only way they can do that is by leading a simple life to the extent possible and to lead from example in austerity. I entirely agree with you that there is no place for ostentatious weddings and vulgar display of wealth in a poor country like India. There is absolutely no doubt about what you said, and I entirely agree with you.
Though, I'd be slightly, I don't think anybody would perhaps mind if it was legitimate wealth. I think the question people ask is how that wealth has been made. And Meera, if you can come in here, because in a sense, AAP also may have the views of something. Nobody knows whether they're right or left. There's no ideology issue here. But on often the rich guy is the easy target in some ways. That you're saying, oh, that he's rich means he's corrupt, means he has black money. And a lot of entrepreneurs and etc. come out saying that, you know, this kind of stereotyping is not something we appreciate either. Has AAP again put itself, and a lot of Anna Hazare today has come out saying that I support the move of the Prime Minister. AAP's doublespeak on this issue seems a bit strange, because in a sense, if you're against black money, why not support the move wholeheartedly instead of asking for a rollback? Is it, or if it's only about implementation?
So, you know, the question, Sonia, is let's be very clear. I think we need to understand that no one is against no one is for black money or for corruption. But I think one thing that needs to be made very clear is that not all cash is black money and not all black money is cash. And really my question in terms of all of this, I mean, you know, keeping all kinds of political ideology apart, what action has been taken on black money? The data which is with the Income Tax Department is more than sufficient for you to have taken action. What action has been taken, for example, against the Bellary brothers? there is, as Mr. Narendra Modi says, a lot of ostentatious spending which goes on. I'm here in the city of Delhi, and I can tell you, Sonia, I'm quite astonished. Looking around, one would expect certain circles of people to be really worried. I mean, people are saying, why don't you see BMWs in lines and things like that? Of course, you don't see rich people standing in lines of banks, but also you don't seem to see them being worried. I have actually seen people talking about people walking around with wads of 2,000 rupee notes. The question is, how is all of this happening? Are you truly serious in your intent about tackling black money? And if so, was this the best move? I think that is the question which is being asked. By doing this, have you actually, I mean, you know, very, very good test was Mahatma Gandhi's test. When you take a measure, think about the impact on the poorest citizen of the country. What have we done to the poorest citizen of the country? As you know, Mr. Sen just said, the poorest are suffering the most. The daily wage workers, the farmers, they are the ones who have really been very, very badly hit by this. And my question is one more, Sonia. From an economic point of view, the Indian economy was doing really well. On the global scale, we were one of the fastest growing economies in the world. You have derailed that for no ostensible good purpose. They say that only 6% of the black economy is locally held in cash in India. And so what have you done about the 15 lakh which was supposed to come back into everyone's account? You know, what steps have you concretely taken on measures which you could have?
Pinky, why don't you go ahead and answer that? But also the question, and this is being raised, I mean, we've seen some PILs, some may be frivolous, but the others will point on, people are actually queuing up for their own money. This is not the government's money. They're queuing up for their own money. Are you making also, every day with the new income tax rule coming out with this saying you can do this much, you can do that much, the whole indelible aspect, do this, you can do this, the rules changing every day?
Two things.
Yes.
Indelible ink, for example, is meant to ensure that people get parity across board. So one person doesn't benefit from the system, or one set of persons, and other people are completely deprived. You do it to prevent people from misutilizing a system. It's not anything to do with criminality whatsoever. As far as the common man is concerned, as I said, please understand, if you talk about the economic aspects, you have three distinct features in favor of this action. And I am somehow not able to appreciate what, Meera was talking about, what else have you done? Let us for a moment not get into what else we need to do or we could have done. Right now we have this proposition ahead of us to say what we have done here, is it credible? Now, intent is clear, one. Secondly, economically, interest rates have gone down. Budget deficit is predicted to go down because of the macroeconomics, and I don't want to go further into the details, but every technical person would confirm that position. Inflation is likely to decrease on account of this move. Money is supposed to get pumped back. Jan Dhan Yojanas and the banking practices that people have adopted, and we are talking about now the rural and the poor sectors. Even earlier when Jan Dhan came up, look at the amount of money that came into the system, and it comes into the system. So directly you have money available for utilizing for country's economic growth. So this whole thing about how it will impact, the whole thing is for the economic growth. If you take that as a criteria, yes, you can raise questions on how efficacious it has been, how execution has been difficult or not difficult, but it's not about anything about the queues. Queues had ultimately come around because of the manner in which demonetization does have to happen. Secrecy is a part of the move, and yes, in due course of time, I'm sure every detail will be ahead of him.